What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Bracket Science. I'm Brandon Jadich, your host. We had a crazy week. We have a lot to talk about today. Four of the top five college basketball teams all took a fall, UConn being the only one to survive. We're going to talk about some of these games. More ranked teams went down, a lot of other upsets, specifically on the road. These ranked teams were going down like flies. We'll get into some of our new rankings after all of this madness went down, but we put our rankings for the rest of the year, not just like an AP poll. This is what we view the rest of the year to be like. So stay tuned for that. And then we also updated our bracketology. We're going to discuss some of the highlights of that. We're going to post that full list on our Instagram and Twitter along with our Facebook. Our Instagram and Twitter is at Bracket Science with two S's. We would appreciate a follow on there. Our Facebook is Bracket Science. Feel free to like us on there. We'll also post it on our blog at bracketscience.weebly.com. Finally, we will have a Sweet 16 preview for you tonight. It is currently Friday. Tomorrow is Saturday, and there are a ton of great college basketball games. I think there's over 100 again. Not as great as last week, but still a ton of games. We'll talk about Sweet 16 matchups, a lot of good ones. Let's get right into it. Let's start with some of the teams that fell this past week. Starting with Houston. Let's just go strictly in chronological order. We'll start with Tuesday night. Houston visited Iowa State, and this is a tough place to play. As we learned, Iowa State won 57-53. Houston actually played well for how they started. It was 14-0 right out of the gate, Iowa State, but Houston fought back, actually took the lead. But Iowa State in that home environment, tough place to play. Good win. First loss in the Big 12 for Houston. Big win for Iowa State's resume as well. Let's get through these kind of quickly so we can move on to some of our rankings and bracketology. Purdue visited Nebraska and got beat pretty bad, 88-72. Zach Edey did not have a Zach Edey-like game. He still had 15-7, which is good for anyone except Zach Edey. Nebraska handled him just as well as any team has in the nation so far. Purdue's going to fall games. They're not going to go undefeated. I'm not too worried about Purdue. Nebraska's good. Nebraska's 13-3 on the year right now. They're looking better and better. Everyone wants to beat Purdue. They're the number one team in the nation. They have the best player in the nation. They're going to get everyone's best. We'll see how they do. If they don't lose a game, if Purdue doesn't lose a game at home all year, I will expect that Purdue is the number one overall seed in bracketology and quite frankly should be the favorite to win it all. Because on the road, it's just so different. It's tough for any team to go travel to, especially an elite environment like Nebraska and win. So Purdue, I'm not worried about them at all. Great win for Nebraska, though. They got some players over there. The only ranked on ranked matchup on Tuesday was number 18 BYU visiting number 14 Baylor. BYU led by 6 at the half, but Baylor ended up winning the game 81-72 to stay undefeated in this beautiful new arena that they had. This home environment leveraged them to a 9-point victory over BYU. Let's move on to the Mountain West. Just a few other notable games, a few other teams that took a fall that are ranked. Colorado State visited Boise State, and Boise State beat them 65-58. There's been a lot of talk about the Mountain West with their core five: Utah State, Colorado State, Nevada, San Diego State, New Mexico. Boise State is right there as well. In terms of our new bracketology, Utah State, Colorado State, Nevada, San Diego State are in as of right now and seeded pretty well, I will say. New Mexico is one of the first four out. They dropped a few games this past week. Boise State's starting to get recognized. They're in our next four out as of right now. They'll have many opportunities in the Mountain West to win home games against teams like Colorado State, as they just did. They'll have some opportunities to pick up some high quad wins there. Moving on, team that maybe should have lost, but did not. It was number 25, Texas, who is ranked somehow, still shouldn't be ranked, but that's not here or there. They visited Cincinnati across the nation in Ohio, and Cincinnati was winning by 1. Max Abesmith comes down, hits a buzzer beater, just doing what Max Abesmith does. Texas wins 74-73. Dylan Dessou is back, and Dylan Dessou has been great. Texas picks up a much-needed win for their resume on the road at Cincinnati. Tough loss for the Bearcats. I like Cincinnati. I think they got a good thing going over there, but Texas ends up winning the game. Another surprising final score we'll talk about was number 11 Duke visiting Pitt in a game where a lot of people were taking Pitt. Duke was favored by only 4.5 in this game. Pitt supposed to be decent this year. They just have not been. Duke killed them 75-53, and it was not as close as this final score even is. It was more than a 22-point game. Duke led by 30 at some points. It's just time to face the facts that it is just not very good. They have a lot of talent. I like what they do over there. Blake Hinson is an absolute bucket, but they're just not very good this year, and it happens. Teams have down years, but Duke is dominant right now. They're looking good. They're looking like a preseason top two team, and that is what they were, but they are ranked number 11th right now. Good win, though, for Duke. Let's move on to an unranked matchup that I feel like we should talk about a little bit. It was South Carolina visiting Alabama. South Carolina led 29-28 in this game. Alabama ended up leading 30-29 at half. 1 point game. You think it'd be close? Not even. Alabama dominated the second half and won the game 74-47. I'm trying to do the math here, what that would be. 44-18 in the second half. Yikes. 44-18 Alabama in the second half. This Alabama team, they locked up on defense. I watched this entire game. They locked up on defense to go with that firepower of an offense. This team is scary. This team is not a team I would like to play in March. Alabama rarely has a game where they score under 75 points. They only scored 74 in this one. Still just a blowout performance. Good for Alabama. They're looking good. Let's move on to Wednesday, which was our upset night. This is the night we want to talk about. It started on ESPN Plus, game that really shouldn't have even happened, shouldn't have been close because it's UCF. Shout out to UCF. They beat Kansas, number 3 team in the nation, 65-60. Great win for the Knights. There was a sign. They stormed the court. It was a great environment. There was a sign that went viral. It was some girl at UCF just holding a sign up saying, "We're just happy to be here," referring to the Big 12. And what a way for UCF to get their first Big 12 win over the Big 12 powerhouse, Kansas, number 3 team in the nation. Kansas is showing some signs. I haven't been big on Kansas since the beginning of this year. I just don't think they don't have all the pieces. A lot of people have talked about the shooting guard. Yeah, it's bad. Elmarco Jackson had 0 points in this game. You need more out of that from a shooting guard, but they just don't score the ball that well. Hunter Dickinson is really good, but he's not a take over the game kind of guy like Kevin McCullough kind of is. Kevin McCullough still struggles to shoot sometimes. Said it before, don't really bet on Kansas to win the national championship. I don't see this team winning a national title this year, which will be disappointing by their standards, but hopefully, you never know. They got Bill Self. Maybe they can make some magic happen. No idea what just happened there, but let's move on. Number 5, Tennessee visited Mississippi State. Tennessee gets beat 77-72. Tolu Smith for Mississippi State was an absolute bucket in this game. It was his first start. Mississippi State, this team is really good when they play how they can play. We saw that loss at home against Southern earlier in the year, which was ugly, no doubt about it. Tennessee, they scored 24 points in the first half. I think this team is very inconsistent. Dalton Connect went off in the second half. He had 30 points in the second half, but just not enough to come back and beat Mississippi State. Tennessee, they can have some offensive woes, and we're seeing it against these higher ranked teams. I guess you can say Mississippi State is a pretty elite program over there. We saw it against North Carolina until the second half. It can be ugly for Tennessee. I'm still on the Tennessee train, but we'll see. Good win for Mississippi State in their resume. Butler visited Marquette. Marquette struggling, number 11 team in the nation, but Butler goes into Marquette and wins 69-62. Yikes, Marquette. Both teams. Butler moves to 11-5 on the year and 2-3 in the Big East. Doesn't sound that great. That's what Marquette is as well, who's supposed to be an elite team. We had them in top 5 for a while at the beginning of this year. Marquette also 11-5, 2-3 in the Big East. They lost 3 games total in the Big East last year. We see it sometimes. All the same team comes back. They have a lot of the same players, and it just doesn't happen. We're seeing it with FAU this year as well. We'll get into them a little bit. Marquette, a difficult loss here. Tyler Kolek did not shoot the ball well. He had 2 points. Big East Player of the Year last year, not shooting efficient at all. 0 for 7 from 3. Not great. Not great for Marquette. Let's move on to the ACC, where number 21 Clemson visited Virginia Tech. We've been big on Clemson all year. We've been telling people it's not the same Clemson team that usually does so well in the preseason, not preseason, but regular season, non-conference play. And then they get into conference play and start losing every game and become a bubble team. We've been preaching that. It's happening. We're seeing it happen right now. Clemson's 1-3 in the ACC, getting beat by 15 to Virginia Tech. Clemson lost. They lost some games where they lost to North Carolina, which you can expect. But this Virginia Tech game, it's Virginia Tech's not great. They're sort of a bubble team. We moved them into the bubble because of this win. Not great. Not great for Clemson. They got to get some stuff figured out. This team is too talented to be 1-3 in the ACC. They were a lot of people's pick to win the ACC this year. Not off to a good start. Let's move on to the Big 12, where number 9 Oklahoma visited TCU. TCU dominated pretty much this entire game, ended up winning by 9, 80-71. Oklahoma was one of our last undefeated teams, but we're starting to see them struggle in the Big 12. Their true colors are kind of coming out. I still like this team. I like Javion McCullum a lot, but we'll see. They're going to struggle to win games on the road, especially at games like TCU, Kansas, Houston, all these elite teams, even Texas. We'll see how they do going forward. A few other just quick notable things. North Carolina, UConn, Wisconsin were the only teams that really handled their business on the road. They all won. North Carolina beat North Carolina State in a rivalry game, beat them pretty bad. UConn beat Xavier in a pretty close game. It seemed everyone was rooting for Xavier and not for the right reasons. Everyone just wanted to see all 5 of the top 5 teams go down. But Dan Hurley, excuse me, we're not talking about Arizona State. Dan Hurley and UConn end up stealing the deal and beating Xavier by 5. Wisconsin beat Ohio State in Columbus. That was a good win for this Wisconsin Badgers team, who is continuing to impress. Let's talk a little more about some other notable matchups that kind of flew under the radar a little bit. Number 13, Memphis, almost got beat by UTSA. That would have been a disaster. This was in Memphis. This would have been a quad 4 loss. Memphis ended up winning 107-101. Yikes. Not UTSA is 7-9 on the year. I had to look up what their acronym even meant. It's Texas San Antonio. Makes sense, I guess. But Memphis avoiding disaster there. They somehow pulled it out. No flaw in the resume, but not a great win. Florida traveled to Ole Miss, where Ole Miss beat them 103-85. Huge win there for Chris Beard and his squad. This Ole Miss team is really good. I know they got blown out by Tennessee, but this Ole Miss team is good. They will be a tournament team, I think, without a doubt. We talked about Ken Pom having them going 7-11 in the SEC. I don't see this happening. I think this team is too good. I think they go at least 500, at worst, maybe 8-10. Good win for Ole Miss there. Providence visited St. John's. St. John's won the game closely, 75-73. Both teams sort of fluctuating towards the bubble. Both teams are in our tournament as of right now, but Rick Pitino's squad is starting to roll. Joel Soriano is great. He missed a lot of free throws coming down the stretch. This game should have been a little bit it was kind of a blowout for a while for St. John's, and Providence just slowly but surely, thanks to Devin Carter, he had 31 points. He had a huge night. St. John's, though, they have some things to figure out, like the free throw shooting. This team could be really good. Rick Pitino is a great basketball coach. No matter what you think about him off the court, he is a great basketball coach, and St. John's is rolling. A big mid-major matchup out of the Missouri Valley Conference was Indiana State visiting Drake. Both the two teams that have the best chance to win that conference. Indiana State favored, Drake second, but Drake won the game 89-78. Good win for the Drake Bulldogs after getting blasted by Belmont in their game before. And then the most ridiculous outcome of the night, we have to mention, Kenny Payne and Louisville go into Miami and win 80-71. What a hit to the resume for Miami. Miami was starting to kind of figure things out. They won that game against Clemson. Then they lost at Wake Forest. But you can't lose games to Louisville in the ACC. Louisville, one of the worst teams in the Power Six, if not the worst team. They got beat by DePaul, who is the worst team. So, tough loss for Miami and their resume. We had just moved them into the tournament. This is too much. They're out. They're still considered. Don't get me wrong. They're in our next 4 out as of right now. Tough loss for Jim Laranaga's squad there. Just a couple games Thursday night, and then we'll get into our power rankings. Florida Atlantic avoided disaster again at Tulane. They ended up winning the game 85-84. Wow, this was a close one. It was 84-83 Tulane going into the final possession. FAU had the ball. Elijah Martin from FAU shot a three and got fouled. Tulane fouled. Elijah Martin made two of the three free throws. FAU wins 85-84. Tough, tough for Tulane. The fans were already on the court ready to storm, and then they fouled him. He made the two free throws. FAU, we maybe the same case as some of the teams we just talked about. Who are we just talking about? Marquette, maybe same case. They're just not as good this year as they were last year. They were rolling last year. They were hot all year. I mean, they're 50-50 games with Tulane. They're losing to Charlotte. They're losing to Florida Gulf Coast, losing to Bryant. But then we see them play with Arizona, and it's like, all right, this team has some skill. FAU, they're hanging on by a thread right now. We said it was going to be a two-man race between them and Memphis. I still believe that as of now. Memphis has not impressed me at all, and FAU definitely not. We'll see. FAU's ceiling, I believe, is higher than Memphis. We'll get into that in a little bit here. Let's move on to the next game. Michigan State visited number 10 Illinois. This was definitely the best game of Thursday, and Illinois won 71-68. Illinois staying solid without Terrence Shannon. His team's still really good. Marcus Domask is really good. Michigan State falls to 9-7 on the year, though. Yikes. The game we got to talk about, Gonzaga visited Santa Clara. Gonzaga favored by 8.5, 9-4 on the year, desperately need these WCC games, and lost 77-76. Santa Clara. Gonzaga, they're the favorite to win the WCC right now. They're minus 105 on FanDuel. St. Mary's is plus 150 on FanDuel. I would lean St. Mary's right now. We added St. Mary's into our bracketology. St. Mary's has been playing better as of late. Gonzaga is not. I think Gonzaga is still the more talented team. Watch out for Santa Clara and teams like San Francisco as well to maybe give Gonzaga and St. Mary's a run for their money come conference tournament time. Then the final game we just got to talk about was Blue Blood team, UCLA visiting Utah, and Utah won 90-44. Yikes. We just had to mention this. Mick Cronin has some serious problems going on over there. They're 6-10, a blue blood program, most NCAA championships of all time, 6-10. Mick Cronin doesn't want to be there. His players don't want to be there. Rough day to be a UCLA fan. Rough season to be a UCLA fan. All right, that's enough from our week recap. Let's move into some of our rankings. We released our rankings. Normally we do a hierarchy of hoops where we release our best teams, kind of AP poll style, but this one we decided to release for the rest of the season. What is including March? As of right now, this will continue to change. It's not going to stay the same. Teams are going to get beat, but this is where we see as of right now going forward. Still have Purdue at number one. They, as we said, if they don't lose a home game, they're just losing games in tough environments. We do have Arizona at number two, which has raised a few concerns. We got a few comments on this when we posted it on our social medias. I just think Arizona's ceiling is just as high as anyone in the country. Them and Purdue, I see is just, they're very similar. They're both so good. I'm giving Arizona the benefit of the doubt. Number three, we have Kentucky all the way up to number three because this team is just getting better and better. They're not a freshman-like team. We know how many freshmen they have. They play so mature. They don't turn the ball over. They have so much talent. The addition of Aaron Bradshaw made all the difference in the world. They have some height in there. This team is great. We have UConn at 4 and North Carolina at 5. Both teams just kind of rolling. I expect UConn to win the Big East. North Carolina should win the ACC. We'll go over just a few other notable ones. We're not going to go through everyone on this list. Wisconsin at number 9, kind of our team that's flying under the radar. They lost 2 of their first 3 games. They lost bad at Providence early in the year. And then they have just rolled. They have rolled the entire season, other than that fluke at Arizona, where Arizona was as hot as they had ever been. But Wisconsin is beating everyone. They just went into Ohio State, who was a good team. Ohio State was favored, and Wisconsin just blew them out. They beat them by 11. Wisconsin is very good. They're my sleeper team as of right now. Their resume is so good that we actually have them up to a 2 seed in our bracketology, which is kind of surprising some people because just because they got off to such a rough start, they're very good. Watch out for Wisconsin. We have Duke up to 10 and Auburn up to 11. Auburn has looked great as of late. Jonai Broom is an absolute stud. Few other notable things. We have Alabama up to 15. This is a kind of a shot in the dark. I think as this team is very good. They have so much talent on offense. They're starting to figure out their defense. Ken Pom actually favors Auburn to win the SEC and then Alabama next. I like Alabama. I like Mark Sears. This team's starting to figure it out. Nate Oates is doing a great job over there. Good for them. At 16, just going down the list a little bit, San Diego State. This San Diego State team, what I didn't really realize, I've kind of fallen off on San Diego State, just haven't paid that much attention to them. It's 100% on me. But this team is they're very similar to the team last year that made that championship run. And people say, yeah, maybe they didn't beat anyone en route. They beat the number one overall seed in Alabama en route to their national championship run. They beat Florida Atlantic, who had the best record out of anyone. His team's good. Jadon Ledee is legit. He is a legit big man in the post. He is a threat to be considered when it comes to player of the year. It's going to be Zach Edey, but he will be close. He will be up there. We have Marquette dropped all the way down to 17. They got to turn something around. They got to start making shots. I don't know what's going on with Tyler Kolek. He hasn't been himself. Cam Jones got hurt early in this game, so that's something to look out for, unfortunately for him. I think Shaka Smart will get it figured out, but I wasn't too big on this team last year. I had Michigan State beating them in the second round, and Michigan State did end up beating them second round of the tournament, but it was in overtime, so Marquette put up a good showing. I just don't think they compete with some of the best teams in the nation. Their resume was kind of carried by that win against Kansas, and quite frankly, I don't think Kansas is that good. So Marquette's all the way down to 17. A little bit debatable on the next one. We do have Florida Atlantic at 18 for now. Their ceiling is so high, as we saw. I still think all the talent is there. John L. Davis, Elijah Martin, Nick Boyd, they're so good. Vlad Golden is so good. I think their ceiling's there. They have experience. I'm curious to see what they do come March. If they make it to March, I guess we can say that. We have Florida Atlantic at number 18. Got a couple Mountain West teams. Colorado State is 19. Utah State's 23. Nevada's 24. And then our biggest take, our most hated take, I got quite a few messages about this. Memphis at 25. I'm not sold on Memphis. Some of their wins, we talked about how they had so many quad 1 and quad 2 wins early in the year. These wins have just not aged great. They beat VCU in overtime. Now they just beat UTSA in overtime. They beat Virginia, which seemed good then, but Virginia is not in our tournament right now. They're barely winning games. They shouldn't have beat SMU. This team is just they beat Clemson by 2 on their home floor, and Clemson's 1-3 and slowly but surely moving down the seed list. I like Memphis. I like Penny Hardaway. As of right now, I think they're frauds though. Come March Madness, we have them up as a 4 seed right now. If I were to pick a 13 seed to beat a 4 seed, it would be this. Especially if they were to unfortunately draw someone like a McNeese, even a Charleston. I have a hard time taking Memphis, at least past the second round. We'll see how they do. Moving on from that, we have Ole Miss at 26. Just going down these quickly at the bottom. BYU all the way down to 27. I think they're going to struggle in the Big 12. They said they still did enough non-conference wise to stay ranked. Mississippi State's up to 28. Northwestern up to 29. Texas Tech is in the rankings at 30. Princeton, our mid-major team, our favorite mid-major team as of right now, at 31. And TCU up to 32. I like what I'm seeing from TCU as of late. That's it for our power rankings moving forward. We'll get in next week to some of the bets that you can place with these power rankings, some conference winner bets, regular season. We have enough knowledge now where we can get into that, along with some of the national championship winner bets. Let's move on. Let's talk about some of our bracketology real quick. We're going to release this. It's going to be on our Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, so go check those out. We'll link those below in the show notes. Let's just talk about our 1 seeds, 2 seeds, a few other notable things. The 1 seeds, it is still Purdue. They have the best resume in the nation. They're our first overall seed. Houston is still 2. They only have lost 1 game. They don't have the most quality wins, but they still have good enough wins. Some of their wins kind of looking worse and worse, kind of like A&M. A&M, another team that Memphis beat, by the way, not to go back to that. But let's keep moving forward. Arizona is our third number 1 seed. It was Kansas, but Kansas fell. We also had Marquette there at one point because of their resume, but with Kansas losing and Marquette keeps falling and falling, Arizona has a great resume. They beat Duke at Duke, they beat Michigan State. They're fine. They're our third number 1 seed. And our fourth number 1 seed, it was kind of up for grabs. It was between UConn and Kansas, but UConn does have the better resume as of right now. They have the better loss against Seton Hall instead of UCF, and UConn's our fourth number 1 seed. Our first number 2 seed is Kansas, second being North Carolina, who is slowly but surely climbing. Third is Wisconsin, as we talked about. Looking at their resume is really good. They have beat some quality teams. Kentucky, moving all the way up to our fourth number 2 seed, kind of just by default there. Some teams falling. Speaking of Clemson, Marquette, they're falling. Baylor falling. Kentucky all the way up to number 2. They haven't done anything to not be. Great team. Let's talk about some other notable some of our top seeds. Auburn, we have all the way up to a 3 seed. They're slowly but surely building a great resume. They're high up at the net. They got a great thing going. Clemson and Marquette are both down to 4 seeds as of right now, and Clemson is in serious jeopardy of falling even further if they don't start winning games in the ACC. I think Marquette will be fine. I'm less worried about Marquette than I am about Clemson, but both teams better watch out. Let's talk about some teams that are kind of near the bubble and then get into our bubble talk. Speaking of some teams that just picked up big wins, Iowa State and Mississippi State both up to 7 seeds right now. Big wins for them. Mississippi State has that fluke loss against Southern. Iowa State, they haven't really beaten anyone until Houston. They proved themselves. They're up to a 7 seed. St. John's and Texas Tech are up to 8 seeds after some of their big wins. Texas Tech beat Texas. St. John's has been beating everyone. They're rolling. While FAU is falling all the way down to an 8 seed. We had FAU as a 3 seed at one point after that win against Arizona. They are down to an 8 seed all the way. They better watch out. Northwestern and Cincinnati are up to a 9 seed. Both teams have impressed. Kind of near the bubble. They're in our tournament right now. Ohio State and Providence both dropped to a 9 seed. They're in our last 10 teams in. So Ohio State's lost 2 in a row. Providence, that loss of Bryce Hopkins is so unfortunate because I liked where they were going. But unfortunately, they are dropped all the way down to a 9 seed. Let's talk about some of our last buys that we gave out. Nebraska is a 10 seed. They're in. Utah, also a 10 seed. They are in. TCU and Wake Forest are also 10 seeds and getting buys. Those are our 4 10 seeds. They're close, but they're in right now. And Oregon receives our last buy as an 11 seed. Oregon, undefeated in Pac-12 play, off to a good start. Let's talk about our first 4. Our first 4 teams with completely different resumes in this game. Texas and Seton Hall, they are in our first 4 right now. The next one, also very different resumes, Texas A&M and South Carolina. Both Seton Hall and Texas A&M have great wins and bad losses. Texas and South Carolina they don't have any really bad losses. They just haven't beaten that many great teams. So they're in our first 4. Our first 4 out, the first team out, Michigan State, after dropping to 9 and 7. This team is a legit bubble team. I've seen people moving them up to 7s and 6 seeds, but they're 9 and 7. They really don't have that many quality wins. They beat Baylor, and it looked better then because it was Baylor's first loss where they just beat them pretty badly, but they're 9 and 7. They're not a for sure team right now. They're actually our first 4 out. Virginia is our next team out. Virginia has been struggling as of late. They are falling at the net. They better pick up some key wins. Tony Bennett might figure it out. Great coach, but not great right now. Butler is our next team out. That win over Marquette kind of boosted them. They're close. They were close, but no cigar yet. They're our third. New Mexico, after falling a couple games, is our last first 4 team out. Quickly just going through our next 4 out. Kansas State, Virginia Tech, Florida, and then Miami. We had Miami actually as one of our last 4 buys. That loss at Louisville is devastating for their resume. They're all the way to our next 4 out. That's it for our bracketology. Let's get into our Sweet 16 Saturday games. Starting at noon, number 5, Tennessee visits Georgia. Tennessee favored by 7. Georgia off to a sneaky good start. They're 12-3 on the year. This game's on ESPN2 if you want to check that out. Tennessee is favored by 7 right now. I would take Tennessee minus that 7 coming off a loss. Georgia, they're off to a good start. They beat Arkansas the other night at home, but I think Tennessee is just so much more talented than Georgia. Give me Tennessee minus the 7. Also at 12 o'clock, Syracuse visits North Carolina, number 17 in the 7 team in the nation. North Carolina favored by 12.5. This is the start of the day on ESPN. Syracuse, they're kind of considered. They're in our next 4 out. We didn't discuss that yet. They've been okay. 12.5 seems like a lot of points at North Carolina, but we know how much firepower North Carolina has. Armando Bacot's been great. After that rivalry game, give me Syracuse plus 12.5. That seems like too many points. At 12, Northwestern visits number 15, Wisconsin. Wisconsin favored by 8.5, and this is on the Big Ten Network. Wisconsin is cover machines. You're crazy if you take anything other than Wisconsin in general. 8.5 is a lot of points, especially against a good Northwestern team. I'm taking Wisconsin minus 8.5. They cover everything. They win by double digits all the time. Give me Wisconsin. Also at noon, Seton Hall visits Butler in a big East matchup there. As we said, Butler, one of our first 4 out. Seton Hall, one of our first 4 teams in. So very big bubble match there. Butler is favored by 5 at home. This is according to KenPom. Line has not been released yet on FanDuel or DraftKings. This is on Fox Sports 1. This is a sneaky line here. I wouldn't bet this game, especially if it's 5. If FanDuel and DraftKings lean more Butler minus 2.5 or minus 3.5, I'd take Butler. At 5.5 or 6.5, I'd probably take Seton Hall. That seems like too many points, especially a Seton Hall team that just went in and beat Marquette. They're thriving with confidence. Give me Seton Hall plus 5. I would take them. At 1 o'clock on Fox, a good Big East matchup. St. John's visits number 22, Creighton. Creighton favored by 7.5. Another tough line. How do you bet the Big East this year? Tough conference to pick. Can't go wrong betting with the home team, it seems, most of the time. I'll take Creighton to win the game. I think Creighton wins, but I could see Joel Soriano just frustrating Creighton. I think Creighton wins the game, but I think St. John's covers plus 7.5. Give me St. John's. At 2 o'clock, it is the highest ranked matchup of the day, but is on ESPN Plus, believe it or not. It's number 9, Oklahoma visiting number 3, Kansas. Kansas favored by 5.5, and everyone should be taking Kansas minus 5.5. They're coming off that loss. They need a win bad. Oklahoma has not impressed. Kansas, as I said, I'm not big on them, but I do think in this home environment, they cover that 5.5. At 2 o'clock, number 6, Kentucky visits Texas A&M. A&M actually favored by 1. This game's on ESPN. It all depends what Wade Taylor shows up. Wade Taylor shot 2 of 16 the other night, but yet we also saw him just single-handedly bring back Texas A&M against Houston. I'll take Kentucky. I think Kentucky's so much better than Texas A&M. But if Wade Taylor goes off in that home environment, SEC play, I'm still give me the Wildcats. Give me Reed Shepherd. Give me Aaron Bradshaw. I think the Wildcats win. Virginia takes on Wake Forest at Wake Forest. Wake Forest favored by 5. This game's on ESPN2. Give me Wake Forest minus 5. They beat Miami at home when Miami was playing well. Virginia, they can't score the basketball, especially on the road. They are one of the worst road teams we've ever seen. Wake Forest minus 5. Take a minus 5. At 2 o'clock out of the Mountain West, number 19, San Diego State visits New Mexico. New Mexico favored by 1.5. This game's on CBS. New Mexico is one of the toughest places to play, believe it or not. I think San Diego State's the better team. It's going to be tough to go into this environment. This is a 50-50 game. I think it will eventually end up being a pick'em game. Right now, it's minus 1.5 New Mexico. I'll take San Diego State just with the point. I think it's going to be a close game all the way through. Just the San Diego State team is so veteran. They're so experienced. I think they have a good chance to go in there and knock off New Mexico, even on an incredibly tough environment. Out of the SEC, Arkansas visits Florida. Florida favored by 7.5. This game's on ESPN. Florida just lost to Ole Miss, they also lost that game against Kentucky. I think they rebound here, and I think they cover that 7.5 against Arkansas. Arkansas is not good right now. They just got beat by Georgia by double figures. Give me Florida minus 7.5. Also at 4, Kansas State visits Texas Tech. Texas Tech favored by 7.5 at home. This game's on ESPN2. This is another tough one. Both teams near the Texas Tech is comfortably in, but Kansas State near the bubble. 7.5 feels like a lot of points at Texas Tech. I think Texas Tech wins the game. I think I'll take Texas Tech to cover that 7.5 as well. Kansas State, they're not great this year. But Jerome Tang is a winner, but I think this environment's going to be too much for them. Give me Texas Tech minus 7.5. Most outrageous line of the day, though, 5 o'clock. Georgia Tech, who beat Duke early in the year, visits this number 11 Duke team. Georgia Tech beat Duke earlier in the year by 4. Duke is favored by 18.5 in this game. Obviously, it is a different Duke team. They've been playing well as of late. This game's on ACC Network if you want to check it out. 18.5 is too many points. I got to take Georgia Tech, no matter how fired up Duke may be. In Cameron, give me Georgia Tech. 18.5. That is outrageous for a team that beat them. Who knows? Duke might win this game by 40. They've looked a lot better as of late, but Georgia Tech has their number. Give me Georgia Tech plus 18.5. At 6, number 2, Houston visits TCU. This game's on ESPN. Houston favored by 6 in this game at TCU. Give me TCU with the points. Maybe even sprinkle a little bit on TCU money line. Like TCU, I think this team is very underrated. They've got some talent. I know they should have lost that game against Georgetown earlier in the year. I still think this team's good. They should have beat Kansas. They just beat Oklahoma. This team's good. Give me them plus 6. At 7, 2 teams that desperately need a win. Miami visits Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech favored by 2.5 in this game on the ACC Network. Give me Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech just beat Clemson at home. They're rolling right now. They need a win. I don't think Miami has the team. I was big on Miami at the beginning of this year. I'll admit it. I was wrong. This team is not as good as they were last year, losing whatever those 2 guys were. Their names are blanking with me right now. Losing them was just too much. Give me Virginia Tech minus 2.5. Isaiah Wong and Jordan something, whatever. At 8 o'clock, Cincinnati visits Baylor in a key Big 12 matchup. Baylor favored by 6.5. This game's on ESPN. This is another good line. Cincinnati is better than people think. I know you see at Baylor, a ranked team. Tough line. 50-50 on this one. Give me Baylor to cover the 6.5 at home. They look good at home. I could even see Cincinnati going in and winning this game. So the game that probably would stay away from, but 6.5, that's a good line. I'll take Baylor just for the heck of it. At 8:30, Alabama, an unranked team, visits another unranked team, Mississippi State, in a great matchup, though, on SEC Network. Alabama's favored by 2 at KenPom. I think it's going to be a 50-50, a pick'em game, 50-50, just because it is at Mississippi State. Mississippi State just beat Tennessee. I think I'm taking Alabama in this game. It's kind of a nightmare matchup for Alabama because of Mississippi State's size, but Alabama they just shoot it so well. We saw them go into basically Zach Edey crowd in Toronto, and they almost won the game. They almost beat Creighton at Creighton. I think it's going to lean towards Mississippi State being favored by 1.5 or so. I'll take Alabama. I think Alabama money line has too much value, and I think they're a better team than Mississippi State. Mississippi State's tough at home, and it is a good matchup for them, but just for the heck of it, I'll take Alabama. I'm big on this team. I'll stick by them. Alabama win this game. That's it. Nothing good on Sunday. Pretty much nothing to even watch. Illinois plays again, but not great. That's it for our show as well. Thanks everyone for tuning in. If you like this, please feel free to subscribe. If you're watching on YouTube, give us a like, comment your comments. If you want to hate on me for having Memphis at 25, I've heard enough of it already. I love hearing it from everyone. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion. I love talking to everyone about it. This is what we do it for. It is a highly debatable industry, is the college basketball industry. If you want to see our full updated bracketology, you can see it on Instagram and Twitter at Bracket Science with 2 S's in science there, or on Facebook at Bracket Science, 2 words. Give us a follow on all 3 of those to be updated. We post some of the biggest games. We post daily on the games of the day, results of the games of the day. We post all upsets. We post everything on our Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, along with on our blog, bracketscience.weebly.com. We post everything there first. We just posted all of our rankings, and our bracketology is already posted on there. So go take a look at that. Please, 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 again, just subscribe, like, trying to grow this a little bit more. We would appreciate to everyone for doing that. Please share it, whatever you can do. We really appreciate it. Comment your feelings. That's it. Everyone have a great day. Happy Saturday. Go Browns. See ya.